tardes, bienvenidos a todos los hermanos de Latinoamérica que están sintonizando, que se están conectando en los 3 canales de YouTube que tenemos. Tenemos canales en portugués, en inglés y en español. Muy boa tarde para todos que están conectándose, sean todos bienvenidos en esta reunión que vamos a tener. Entonces, good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ILC. South America, we go to the start in 1 minute. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos sean todos a nuestro encuentro el día de hoy. La Federación para la Paz Universal nos convoca para el segundo ILC 2021, capítulo Sudamérica. El tema que nos convoca es la reunificación de Corea como base para la paz mundial a través de la interdependencia, la prosperidad mutua y los valores universales. El día de hoy vamos a desarrollar un hermoso programa y agradecemos a todos por su presencia. Mi nombre es Félix Coronel Fariña, voy a ser vuestro maestro de ceremonia y quiero comenzar saludando a todos y cada uno de las personas que están del otro lado de la pantalla. Muy buenas tardes, reverendo Doug Moshin, chairman de la UPF Sudamérica, doctor Simón Ferraboli, secretario general de la UPF Sudamérica, Magister Mercedes Susana Giuffre, miembro del Consejo Argentino de Relaciones Internacionales, el pastor doctor Charles William Schul Navarro, ex senador y presidente de la Iglesia Cristiana Restaura Colombia, la doctora Susana Mangana Porteiro, especialista en Islam y mundo árabe de la Universidad Católica del Uruguay, el profesor Giovanni Cândido Oliveira, decano del Centro Universitario de Goiás, Brasil, y la pastora Leila Florencio dos Santos, pastora de la Iglesia Cristo Retorno de Brasil. Haji Dr. Roshan Khan, presidente de la UPF, líder de la comunidad musulmana de Guyana, y al obispo Estanislao Obregón, principal de la Iglesia Torre de David de Paraguay. Señoras y señores, sean todos muy bienvenidos. Me gustaría comenzar felicitando a todas las mujeres por el Día Internacional de la Mujer, que se recuerda el 8 de marzo, y en especial a la doctora Hak Jahanmun, gracias a quien nos reunimos hoy para realizar la segunda Conferencia Internacional de Liderazgo ILC 2021 Sudamérica, con el lema por la reunificación pacífica de Corea y la paz mundial, a través de la interdependencia, la prosperidad mutua y los valores universales. Vamos a desarrollar el programa de hoy. Mi nombre es Félix Coronel Fariña, soy secretario general de la UPF Paraguay y voy a tener el honor de ser el maestro de ceremonia de este prestigioso evento. Tendremos la oración de apertura, luego tendremos un video sobre la guerra de Corea, además de las palabras de bienvenida y la presentación de las razones para trabajar por la reunificación pacífica de la península de Corea, y luego tendremos 6 presentaciones de nuestros panelistas invitados y al finalizar una sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Pasamos a la oración de apertura del obispo Estanislao Obregón. Adelante.
Oración, Estanislao Obregón. Padre, te damos muchas gracias en esta hora, Dios de la creación. Clama por ti, la humanidad clama por ti. En este momento, que mi oración y mi súplica llegue en tu trono de gloria. Señor Jesús, en tus manos encomiendo mis oraciones. Entrego en tu poder para que tu paz y tu seguridad esté con nosotros todos los días de nuestra vida. Tú que manejas los días, horas, minutos y segundos. En tus manos está, Señor, nuestra vida. Nuestro andar diario. Señor, fuera de ti no hay salida ni escape. Señor, solamente en ti seguimos confiando. Señor, esta breve oración quiero colocar en tus manos porque tú harás lo mejor para nosotros. Padre, te damos muchas gracias. Agradecemos de la creación. Agradecemos. Muchas gracias. Agradecemos desde la nación de Paraguay. Bendecimos las naciones del mundo, América del Sur y todos los continentes. Que llegue nuestra oración en tus manos. Quiero agradecerte a ti, Señor Jesús, porque tú has abierto puertas para nosotros, para comunicarnos con los hermanos y amigos y los religiosos a través de la UPF. Bendice nuestra segunda conferencia internacional de líderes de América del Sur del año 2021. Tu palabra dice Salmo 122, verso 6. Pedí por la paz de Jerusalén y sean prosperados los que te aman. Sea la paz dentro de tu muro y descanso dentro de tus palacios. Por amor de mis hermanos, mi compañero, diré yo, la paz sea contigo. Padre, esta palabra quiero colocar en tus manos. A partir por la paz y seguridad de nuestro país, Paraguay, por la paz en nuestro continente América del Sur del mundo. Agradezco a tus amados hijos, al reverendo Padre Sun Yun Mon, su señora, la doctora Moon, y la Madre de la Paz, por darnos la oportunidad de comunicarnos contigo, Padre Celestial. Ellos son protagonistas para nosotros. Gracias a ellos por fundar la Federación por la Paz Universal y unirnos y a todos tus hijos, diferentes partes del mundo. Oramos por la unificación de la península de Corea, esta nación que hoy es conocida como la Nueva Jerusalén. Oramos para que haya paz, perdón, amor y seguridad. Muchas gracias, Padre. Te pedimos que recibas nuestra humilde oración en el nombre de mérito de Cristo Jesús. Amén y amén, Señor Jesús.
Amén. Muchísimas gracias al pastor obispo Estanislao Obregón por esta hermosa oración. Vamos entonces al siguiente punto del programa. Vamos a recibir el video preparado por la UPF sobre la guerra de Corea.
En la flor de tu juventud pisabas esta tierra por primera vez. Y mientras tus temblorosos pasos te conducían hacia el campo de batalla, llevabas en tus retinas grabados los rostros de tus seres queridos. Soportando dolorosos días, paralizado entre la vida y la muerte, temblando de temor, dejando tu sangre y tu sudor en una tierra desconocida y viendo caer a tus compañeros de lucha, tú que defendiste a Corea tienes un nombre. Tu nombre es héroe. ...25 de junio de 1950. Las fuerzas aliadas de la ONU cruzaban los 250 kilómetros de división política del paralelo 38, sacrificando sus vidas en medio del fuego de artillería para darnos a nosotros un regalo. Después de la adopción de la resolución del Consejo de Seguridad de Naciones Unidas, bajo el mando de MacArthur como comandante de las fuerzas aliadas, los héroes más comunes pero más grandes recordados por la historia tomaron sus armas y se arrojaron sin reservas a la lluvia de fuego de artillería que caía sobre ellos. 16 países, incluidos Grecia, Sudáfrica, Países Bajos, Nueva Zelanda, Luxemburgo, Bélgica, Etiopía, Estados Unidos, Gran Bretaña, Australia, Canadá, Colombia, Turquía, Tailandia, Filipinas y Francia participaron en la guerra con el ejército coreano en su centro. Dinamarca, Alemania, Noruega, Italia, India y Suecia participaron en la guerra como países de apoyo médico para curar a la península de Corea herida por la guerra. Y otros 41 países del mundo ayudaron a la desnuda República de Corea proporcionando suministros básicos. Tras el estallido de la guerra, nadie quedó librado del fuego de la artillería. Durante 1129 días, 600.000 soldados coreanos perdieron a sus familiares. Las fuerzas aliadas perdieron a 540.000 hombres y también la sangre de 2 millones de civiles bañó sus valles y montañas. La guerra no pudo enviar de regreso a sus hogares a 150.000 soldados del mundo que protegieron a Corea y sus cuerpos renacieron sobre este suelo en la forma de flores. Para muchos el tiempo se detuvo 60 años antes, cuando llamaban a sus camaradas sin obtener respuesta.
But it's very sad to see them, and yet I think it was in a good cause for the liberation of South Korea, for the prevention of the North Korean communists and the Chinese communists, and perhaps even the Russians from overwhelming the Korean peninsula and bringing disaster to the Far East.
Corea, así protegida, ha crecido gracias al sacrificio de vidas entregadas sin condiciones y se ha convertido en una Corea que brilla en el mundo gracias al coraje de los héroes que buscan proteger la libertad. En 2010, al cumplirse el 60 aniversario de la Guerra de Corea, el reverendo Moon y la doctora Han donaron, en lugar de la República de Corea, $10 millones a los veteranos que protegieron este suelo, retribuyéndoles simbólicamente el amor de esos veteranos y enviando además a sus países al ballet infantil Los Angelitos en expresión de gratitud. Los Angelitos llevaron Corea al mundo, llevando la bandera nacional en sus corazones. En 4 giras a 22 países y actuando para 5.000 personalidades importantes, se encontraron con 16.000 familiares de los veteranos de la guerra y tanto a ellos como a decenas de miles de ciudadanos les mostraron por medio de su espectáculo que semejante sacrificio no había sido en vano. Con amor, los angelitos llevaron en sus corazones los nombres de los héroes que protegieron incondicionalmente el suelo de Corea del Sur hace 60 años. Antes que nadie visitaron primero en Corea las tumbas de los veteranos caídos para rememorar las vidas de esos héroes que duermen en esta tierra. Y ante los sepulcros transmitieron gratitud ante el noble sacrificio de los héroes que le extendieron a Corea una mano incondicional. Somos conscientes que la pacífica Corea que disfrutamos hoy es un regalo que estas personas nos dieron, y si hoy podemos sonreír es porque ellos antes brindaron su amor. Si bien muchos veteranos que tomaron sus armas y perdieron a sus camaradas debieron pasar el resto de sus vidas en silla de ruedas, afectados por tantas dolorosas heridas, ellos les expresaron su cálido afecto y aliento a estos angelitos que volaron desde Corea, desde la Corea donde ellos dejaron su sangre y su sudor.
Most important thing, you know how to smile. 60 years ago, the children of Korea were not smart, but you are. And we are very, very proud to have met you. Thank you very, very much.
Llenó sus corazones de alegría saber que niños y niñas como los angelitos crecen felices en este pequeño país del este, donde ellos arriesgaron sus vidas. Pero eso contrastó con la vida de los marginados y olvidados veteranos. Aunque lucharon con su vida por la paz, muchos no tienen qué comer, ni qué vestir, y algunos hasta vendieron su medalla de honor por $1. Pero tal vez lo que más temen y les duele es ser olvidados. Los angelitos fueron en su búsqueda y fueron testigos de sus historias de vida, de vidas de sacrificio, vidas de héroes que sintieron rescatar por medio de este reconocimiento.
저희는 대한민국 해방시키는 도움을 서 있었던 것에 대해서 항상 자랑스럽게 생각하고 있습니다.
En los países visitados, los líderes les dieron una calurosa bienvenida a los angelitos, misión diplomática de buena voluntad y amistad que demostró que Corea aún los recuerda.
Orada hep şöyle dediler. Dediler ki Türklerle biz kan kardeşiyiz. Çok doğrusu memnun oldum tabii. 60 yıl önce Kore'ye giden Türkiye'den çok binlerce subayımız, askerimiz oldu. Ama işte o büyük bir dostluk ve yakınlık, kardeşlik doğurdu.
Los angelitos actuaron para ellos, extendieron sus brazos hacia estos defensores de la paz, de la libertad, que hoy está disfrutando Corea, por lo que les agradece y por lo que jamás los olvidará.
Vamos a brindar un fuerte aplauso, por favor, a este hermoso material preparado por la producción. Después de este emotivo material, entonces vamos a recibir las palabras de bienvenida, justamente de un hermano coreano, un representante de Corea en Paraguay, en Latinoamérica, en Sudamérica específicamente. Vamos a recibir las palabras de bienvenida del reverendo Don Moshin, chairman de la UPF Sudamérica.
Estimados y distinguidos embajadores para la paz, damas y caballeros, me gustaría expresar mi profundo agradecimiento a cada uno de ustedes por participar en esta conferencia internacional de liderazgo organizada por la UPF Sudamérica bajo el tema La reunificación de Corea como base para la realización de la paz mundial. Es un tema muy oportuno, ya que en este año 2021 celebremos el 30 aniversario de la histórica visita del reverendo Moon y su esposa a Corea del Norte, cuando Kim Il-sung aún estaba vivo. Y cuando se acaban de cumplir los 60 años del inicio de la guerra que dividió la península coreana. El comunismo no cree en Dios, reprimiendo la religión, confundiéndola con la fuente del mal. En respuesta a esto, el reverendo Moon ha hecho innumerables esfuerzos durante toda su vida para liberar al mundo comunista. enfocándose en el diosismo. La Biblia nos enseña a amar al enemigo. Con este corazón, el Lebron Moon lideró el movimiento Causa en América del Sur para superar al ateísmo, no a través del odio, sino a través del amor verdadero. El amor verdadero es amar, dar y olvidar. El Lebron Moon ha practicado esta enseñanza durante toda su vida y visitó Corea del Norte, el campo enemigo, para difundir el diosismo y poder liberar al pueblo norcoreano. Uno de los valores fundamentales de la UPP es que Dios, el Creador, es el Padre y Madre de la humanidad. La UPP es una sagrada comunidad donde los líderes de cada campo asisten a Dios y buscan poner en práctica estos valores para realizar un mundo de paz. Este año marca el 30 aniversario de este histórico encuentro y celebramos el espíritu y la práctica de este amor verdadero y lucharemos sin descansar para finalmente poder lograr una Corea verdaderamente unificada. Agradezco a los embajadores para la paz y a quienes hacen lo imposible para servir y trabajar en cada país de acuerdo a los deseos de los fundadores de la UPP, incluso en situaciones tan difíciles como la que vivimos hoy en día, con poca libertad de acción debido al COVID-19, cuando innumerables personas mueren en muchos países, no solo por causa de la pandemia, sino también de hambre y de dolor como resultado de conflictos y luchas entre pueblos, razas y religiones. En realidad, hay obstáculos frente a nosotros en lugar de paz, y creo que es el momento exacto para poner concretamente en práctica nuestros valores fundamentales en nuestras respectivas áreas de actividad. En esta conferencia que iniciamos hoy en Sudamérica, reuniremos a expertos de diferentes países para que puedan ofrecer su contribución al tema de la reunificación de Corea como base para la paz mundial. Esperamos que este encuentro y lo que vendrá sean una oportunidad para que todos los participantes descubran una nueva visión y esperanza. Una vez más, me gustaría agradecerles a todos por su participación. Muchas gracias. 감사합니다.
Muchísimas gracias, reverendo Don Oshin. Un perfecto español. Realmente felicitaciones por estas excelentes palabras de bienvenida. Un aplauso, por favor, para el reverendo Don Oshin otra vez y su esfuerzo en hablar nuestro idioma. Vamos al siguiente punto de nuestro programa. Vamos a escuchar las razones para trabajar por la reunificación pacífica de la península de Corea, que va a presentar el doctor Simão Ferraboli, secretario general de la UPF Sudamérica desde Brasil.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Agradezco a la Federación para la Paz Universal por esta conferencia sobre el tema de la reunificación de las Coreas como base para la paz mundial. Quiero saludar a todos los compañeros de nuestra sala virtual y también a los que nos siguen en YouTube. Vivimos en la era de la globalización y a pesar de la pandemia podemos encontrarnos sin salir de casa. La serie de conferencias de la UPF tiene como objetivo construir un mundo unificado de paz duradera en torno de los ideales centrales de la interdependencia, prosperidad mutua y valores universales compartidos. Esto no solo generará conciencia sobre el problema, sino que dará lugar a una variedad de recomendaciones que se pueden proponer y finalmente llevarse a cabo. La UPF está nombrando esto de think tank, dedicado al estudio de la integración política y económica y también espiritual de toda la humanidad. La guerra de Corea comenzó en 1950, hace 70 años. La guerra terminó no con un tratado de paz, sino con un armisticio, dejando dividida la península de Corea, a pesar de estar habitada por un pueblo con una historia, una cultura y un idioma común. Hubo millones de muertes como resultado de la guerra de Corea, a veces conocida como la guerra olvidada. El destino de la península fue controlado por el entorno geopolítico más amplio conocido durante décadas como la Guerra Fría. La iniciativa de paz de la UPF en el noreste de Asia está dedicada a la reunificación pacífica de la península de Corea. Teniendo esto en cuenta, la UPF organiza una variedad de programas que reúnen a destacados expertos de una amplia gama de campos profesionales: gobierno, academia, sociedad civil, organizaciones religiosas, medios de comunicación y otros, para explorar perspectivas de aumentar las relaciones no solo entre las dos Coreas, pero también con los demás países interesados en la región. El principal objetivo de este enfoque de poder blando para la paz es contribuir a la reunificación pacífica de la península de Corea a través del diálogo, la investigación académica y las iniciativas de sociedad civil que creen conexiones personales. En los próximos 2 años, la UPF llevará a cabo una serie de programas y proyectos de reunificación pacífica muy ambiciosos, trabajando a través de las asociaciones bajo el paraguas de la UPF. Nuestro webinario de hoy es una demostración de esto, con expertos de alto nivel de varios países de América del Sur. Mirando hacia atrás durante muchos años, los fundadores de la UPF, el doctor Samyan Moon y la doctora Hak Jahan Moon, ambos nacidos en Corea del Norte, hicieron grandes esfuerzos para promover la reconciliación entre las Coreas. Hace 30 años,
cannot believe. I,
para discutir las perspectivas de reconciliación. Esta reunión dio lugar
this meeting between Kim Il-sung and Reverend Samuel Moon. It's described in the biography of Dr. Ha Jahan Moon. In 1998, the Children's Folk Ballet of Little Angels of Korea performed at the Performing Arts Theater in Pyongyang. And in that moment, Mr. Cho, president of the National Academy of Arts, said, "The Little Angels made a great work to warm the people's heart here. I hope this also warms the leaders of North and South Korea, so that we can create a wonderful climate for the national unification." During many weeks, on 2003, many groups of South Korean tourists fly directly from South Korea to North Korea to make 5-day visits to visit Pyongyang exclusively with touristic motives. In many occasions, many volunteers send humanitarian help to citizens from North Korea. For example, in 2013, UPF Europe donated 5 shipments of medical supplies to a children's hospital from North Korea. The same was done by the UPF from the US and South Korea and from Asia. These are only some of the examples of the UPF work as a part of the initiatives of peace in the Northeast Asia. UPF considers every opportunities available to the development of different types of activities, economical, cultural, sports, etc., as a way to involve Pyongyang to promote mutual trust and to continue towards the integration of the country. One of the proposals from the UPF is the concept of peace zones created by the Security Council in 2000. In 2000, the founders of UPF proposed the establishment of zone peace zones, in a region where there are many conflicts, citing as an example the DMZ.
Industriales y comerciales que promuevan el crecimiento.
This peace zone would serve as a base for ongoing negotiations in the management of refugees and internal displacees, and for the development of industrial zones and commercial that promote the economical growth and association between nations. To support the reunification of Korea, UPF is supporting the idea to create the fifth World Office of the UN in the DMZ, in the region of Panmunjom. For my own experience, I visit South Korea since 1989, and I've been able to see qualitative change through technology and cultural and economic growth and global integration. In 2009, I visited North Korea for 5 days, and it's impossible to describe the feeling that one has when one arrives to the Pyongyang airport. It's impossible to compare the difference between both Koreas. So I could understand the necessity of this divided country, the necessity to reunificate this country. I believe that true love and truth will prevail upon lies, hate, and hostilities. Dr. Moon, Peace Mother, claims that the future world, it's the ideal world, is going to be the world of the culture of heart and love. Besides, she has launched a series of rallies, hope rallies, with mobilizing world leaders and offering her vision and suggestions for a promising future for all these people as a universal family. We just made the fifth Hope Rally. Is this heart and love which motivate us to work globally as a family to solve the hurt and pain that affects people of all parts of the country, of the world, because a good done for one person is going to benefit the whole humanity. Even though these are difficult times, we must continue to sow the seeds of love and peace, because love, when they grow, the world will have changed. Thank you for joining us in this great cause to heal the pain of the Korean people, a pain that has lasted more than 70 years. Their pain is also our pain. This is why we are here, and that South America can flourish as a hopeful continent and a continent of peace, blessed by God. Thank you very much for your attention.
Entonces, Nos unimos
Thank you very much. And we join fully on our hearts to all our brothers from Korea, and in that hope that they can unificate. We're gonna present our panelists. We're gonna present a part of their curriculum, a part of their resumes. First, Magister Mercedes Susana Giuffre. She's a member of the Argentinian International Relations Council. Uh, she's director of the uh, Asian Studies, Magister in Political Science. He's a historics professor in Mar del Plata. Uh, Also has made a lot of investigations on the peace process of Korea, between the two Koreas. She has published many articles of investigation articles of Korea, and has been invited to expose her investigations in many universities all over the world.
Deliberante de la municipalidad de General Pueyrredón, provincia de Buenos Aires. Así que
So, good afternoon. Welcome, Magister Mercedes Susana Giuffre. Please go ahead.
El micrófono, ahí sí pueden abrir, por favor.
Good afternoon. I would like to give my thank you, my gratefulness to the UPF in the representative of Dr. Simon Fraboli and Reverend Tom Moshin, who have said, who have speak a message really powerful, and also to Miguel for having contacted me in Argentina. The topic of Korean reunification is a topic that is a topic that I have investigated a lot, and I think it's a topic that we should focus on an international level. That and it's also important for the permanent search of peace and reconciliation, understood as peace as a quality, essential quality that must be the premise in the international relationships. The study of the Korean reunification is perhaps the least popular topic in the international relations in comparison to the nuclear topics, terrorism, etc. Inside the Korean environment, the topic of identity is really complex. First, the people of of two Koreas, they don't see themselves part of a one people, as the same people. Each part tends to see themselves as a representation of the true Korean people, and they also don't see their counterparts as part of their people. In second place, while South Korean people, they identify themselves as a member of the global society, North Korea has an identity of self-reliant through their Juche politics. Another goal of the North Korean interest is to become a respected, even feared country, so that other countries don't oppose them. This explains the nuclear weapons. As such, having a neighbor in the same peninsula is difficult and conflicted. The idea of reunification, be it by force or peaceful means, is always present in the North Korean constitution and is a present goal in the North. In comparison, South Korea doesn't have that notion as a collective idea in their people. South Korean people, they believe that they are descendants of many Korean kingdoms from an ancient, and this is backed by the flourishing culture, modern culture that today is an exit. South Korea is inevitable a member of of the world community and must share in it interests and common projects. In exchange between both Korea 17 years ago is unstable and conflictive. Uh, However, interactions between both of them have been difficult by the mutual threats they pose to each other. Uh, the efforts for reunification have been have resulted in failures so far. It's important to manifest what Joe Biden manifested uh, from the ashes of the world. South Korea has shown the world the Ryohan miracle, becoming in a bright example of a flourishing democrat and economic potent. Uh, has been leader in the fight against COVID-19 and ally in the region to promote our prosperity and security for against global obstacles. Biden has also given importance to the denuclearization, the to the demilitarization, sorry, of the uh, reunification of Korea. The most words are important. Words of a president are more important. I will support South Korea, strengthening our alliance to uh, put safety and peace into the East Asian. I will get involved in the diplomacy of principles, and I will continue to pressure for a North Korea that doesn't have nuclear weapons and a reunified Korean peninsula. The process of reunification be taken, has to be brought up slowly and progressively on the base of the mutual respect principle and integrity of territory and identity. Reunified Korea will have to make a declaration of cooperation between neighboring countries. Other authors, as Eduardo García Granado, think that even though they have walked parallel ways, different all over during more than 70 years, in both Korean societies, there is an ideal of pan-Koreanism that makes reference to the necessity that that the same Koreans are the ones that mark the destiny of the nation.
El sur se occidentaliza a pasos agigantados y sus jóvenes dejan de sentirse convocados por un proyecto
and
común.
so, even though the will to unificate of the unification of Korea, the cultural gas it still grows. The South is westernizing itself, and the youngs they are stop feeling convocated to a project of unification.
Y según una encuesta reciente de diciembre de 2017, el 72% de los surcoreanos de 20
We can
años
see now that most of the young Koreans believe that Korean reunification is unnecessary. They are more concerned about their economy, their studies, their jobs, and and life
político por
in the North.
antonomasia y la reunificación es la máxima aspiración.
A unification of Korea is a political project
En el sur,
of
el
more
espectro
importance, and reunification is the
desde el apoyo a la reunificación hasta posturas
ultimate goal. In the South, the
Sur y Corea
opinion on this it has different opinions on this,
proceso de paz de la
from support of
concebido y
reunification
dirigido por
till
el actual presidente de Corea, Moon Jae-in, está en marcha
to irrelevance of the unification.
y cito: durante este periodo, nuestros esfuerzos
The
hacia
process
la
of the
realización
peninsula, the process of peace,
establecimiento de la paz
conceived
permanente
and directed by the president of Korea, Moon Jae-in, is
periodos intermitentes
ongoing during the last 3 years, who said, during this period, our efforts towards demilitarization and peace establishment in the Korean Peninsula have seen some progress towards this goal, with different periods of stagnant.
y también del pasado histórico, religioso, cultural y antropológico que ambas Coreas comparten, pero en un marco buscado de solidaridad.
We believe, in conclusion, that a reunification of Korea and open to the world must be a whole entity of spiritual roots and humanist that are oriented towards a profound identity that can integrate their common historical past, religious, cultural, and anthropological. It,
en la realización de una civilización formada por dos componentes que alguna vez fueron uno solo. La conciencia de la
the awareness of the necessity of the civilization is the start of a shared culture between men and women who are different. This culture prepares the reality through pacts to achieve a life in a reunified Korea in a civilized way. I would like to finish this poem from Kim Nam-jo about the unification of two Koreas,
particularmente por su fuerza y su mensaje.
which I really liked for the strength of the message. South is going to be as north, north is going to be as south. The day in which both colors of the Korean flag are united and we can form purple. 70 millions of citizens will become into one and will look towards the sky with the hands holding together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really a specialist in this topic. We're going to go to the next panelist, Pastor Charles Schultz. I'm going to give a little bit of his background. He's a pastor of a Christian church in Colombia. Studied law and politics science. Member of the National Council of Peace and ex-senator of Colombian Republic. We're gonna welcome him with a big round of applause. Good afternoon, and my regards to the directors of the UPF. I want to say my regards to Dr. Alejandro Fayad, who is the one that contacted me, and to all of the panelists and participants here. I want to talk about those reasons to work towards the reunification of North and South Korea as a base for the world peace realization. I want to start by remembering that the Pacific reunification, which is object of our solidarity uh, support, is a project that involves both governments to produce changes in the society uh, that involve two antagonical visions, and that as a result of the war, of the Cold War between the URSS and the US in the Cold War, caused the division of the Korean Peninsula in North and South, and produced the isolation of North Korea and the economical sanctions. And, and once that the Japan Empire was defeated in 1945, who was defeated in 1953, the violent invasion from North Korea towards South Korea was stopped, and they were built the demilitarized zone in the 38th parallel, where the Korean frontiers were established, which is a frontier that divides Korea not only in territory but also in beliefs, in language, in culture, in technology. And this treaty continues until today without having put an official ending to the war, and they live in a environment of calm with in with exchange of shootings from time to time. Therefore, the threats of war from North Korea are reason enough so that the religious sector that I represent continues to work towards the peaceful reunification of Korea. And for my case, for the Colombian people, these are reasons of solidarity with the lives offered by our country who fought in defense of the Korean people. The reasons are equally substantiated by the experience of historical reunifications who were before divided by the same Cold War as the Vietnam War, as the division of Germany after, and the reunification of Germany after the fall of the wall. As a result, these changes and absorptions require many sacrifices of all the sectors of economical, social aspects in order to achieve the reunification of two societies who were before divided, and also involves a lot of support from the international community. And there are also reasons for the Korean ideology that raises the necessity that the Koreans themselves are the ones that need to share, that need to mark the destiny of their own country. It's the development of the principle of self-determination. This ideology is also represented by the Judeo-Christian principles of interdependency and mutual prosperity that allowed us to work hand by hand with the UPF and are based for our backing of the Dr. Hajahan's proposals for the opening of a new office of the UN in the frontier of North and South Korea. And we request that this proposal is approved. In conclusion, I'm calling out to all the organizations who are based on faith so that we continue to work for the world peace by fulfilling our mission given by God and Jesus, that says that in the city of peace is our own peace. It's a fundamental role of all religions to work for a sustainable peace in all nations of the world. Thank you very much.
Realmente excelente representando a Colombia.
Thank you very much. Excellent representing Colombia. We're going to present our third panelist, especially in
licenciada doble en Economía y Filología Árabe en la Universidad de
Dr.
Londres.
Susan Porteiro, Islam and Arabic World Specialist of the Catholic University in Uruguay.
Tiene diplomado en lengua árabe, coloquial
Is-
egipcia, tiene diplomado en traducción de lenguas sistémicas,
Has many degrees on translation and language degrees on
de la Universidad Pontificia
Islam and Arabic language.
estudios avanzados de obtención del doctorado en la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Tesina aprobada en 2004 para la obtención de la suficiencia investigadora, nota sobresaliente, título Aproximación a la política exterior del reino hachemi de Jordania a partir de su actuación en la guerra del Golfo. Doctorado en programa de estudios árabes y islámicos, Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, en la actualidad pendiente de defensa de tesis. Entonces, con la salvedad de que nuestro tiempo se reduce a 7 minutos. Por favor, doctora Susana Magnana Porteiro, bienvenida.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. So, many of the things that I wanted to say may have already been said. So, I would like to start simply by thanking the UPF for inviting me here to integrate this panel. There are many elements that make Korean reunification one of the main challenges of today's environment. I'm not an expert in Asian studies, but I want to offer a testimony after my visit to Seoul to attend a World Summit. In this visit, I was able to hear many lectures on the topic that we are working today. So it's to me now is since then is evident that there is a really a necessity to work on this topic of the Korean reunification. Uh, I would have had liked to hear the voice of a North Korean citizen as a subjective position, but I was able to hear many perspectives on the Korean reunification issue. I understand that this conflict, we have to support the search for peace. We we live in troubled times right now after the COVID crisis, in economical recess and many economical issues that have arisen due to the pandemics. These are only one of the negative impacts on of the pandemics. We live on a dystopian world in which the race for the vaccines have has altered the world today in many ways. And I bring this into consideration for all of us because we are surrounded by this. Uh,
Perteneciendo, pero que quiero aclarar y dejar aquí asentado que no hablo por ella, no la represento, sino que sí pertenezco a ella. Creo que es imperativo.
and I believe that's imperative that big potents stop involving in other countries. Both South and North Korea deserve to leave behind 70 years of history that might have been a result of the meddling of other countries in. And last year we have seen we have been able to see lack of solidarity, and even so people countries that have taken advantage of these trying times to take advantages on other countries. And we can see that also in Asia, and we can see that in Korea and in Taiwan, China. We cannot uh, avoid the many obstacles that we cannot avoid the many obstacles that are there for us in our work towards the Korean reunification.
No es más que una referencia geográfica, pero que allí en la península coreana tiene todo un significado.
The 38th parallel, one of the ways that both Koreas are have proposed are the denuclearization and de-weaponization of both countries, but both countries have not been have not been have not complied with this, and so this has contributed to the mistrust they both feel between the both country. And there is also a cultural obstacle between North and South Korea. There is a language that they both share, but they have different dialects. And I think that North Korea has adopted reunification ways by maintaining the same ideas that they have for a long time through the self-reliant politic of Juche. it's important that we understand that the different perspectives that the world potencies have on this topic should be taken into consideration. China is on favor of a long-term process of reunification because, for example, they also have their own issues, as for example the division and tension between Taiwan and China. So, for example, South China decided that won't accept the reunification of North and South Korea that is supported by a military support from the US. And the Korean reunification has also been a part of the political agenda of the US. And so we can see that Korean reunification has been affected by many of the other countries' agendas. And there's also the issue of the modern Koreans from South Korea. They don't really care about the reunification of Korea. It's not an issue that is relevant for them. They are more interested in their own lives and their own cultural expansion. As we can see on of the K-pop and K-dramas booms. And so South Korea not only has grown economically, but also now is exporting their culture.
Similar a la de los vecinos norcoreanos, da pie a una considerable brecha generacional que ya mencionó mi colega.
A big generational gap between the South, within the South Korea. Young people are experimenting on other things, and the elderly are they still support the idea of reunification.
Evidentemente, el rol ejercido por el presidente de la República en Corea del Sur es en lo simbólico bastante más reducido que el del líder supremo norcoreano, pero
and we had to also acknowledge the fact that the institutional influence is different between North Korea and South Korea. Between the president and the leader, they are the difference on the level of support of this idea. One of the fears of the reunification it's also one of the also want to have into consideration because South Korea will have to be the country that will have to absorb most of the cost of the unification of a country because of their own technological progress, because it is the country that is most advanced. And the difference, for example, in North Korea only has a negotiation with China due to many obstacles such as the economical sanctions. And
por tanto, el tradicionalismo norcoreano,
so North Korean traditionalism it's emanated by Confucianism and differs from the westernization of South Korea. And besides all of this, I wanted to say that there are many also gaps in that frontier because the Korean frontier separates two opposing universe.
un corporativismo pujante del mercado internacional que fomenta la competitividad individual hacia adentro.
We can see the communism and the difference between communism and capitalism of North Korea and South Korea. and we can see that many young people from North Korea don't really want to continue with the model of communism. And there's also a difference on the big cities of South Korea and the big cities in North Korea, which are really that the qualities and the technology and economical aspects are really different, and all of this has to be taken into account in the topic of Korean reunification.
De la liberación patriótica que diseñó el líder Kim Il-sung, tenemos que en el sur el espectro de opinión abarca posturas que van desde la apuesta efectiva por la reunificación hasta la aceptación de Corea del Sur y Corea del Norte como dos naciones bien distintas y por
So
tanto
there are many varied opinions into the reunification that varied from accepting both different countries and from this to unification of a country. And we can also we should also mention that the US is not really focused on the unification of the country, because if they were to reunificate, they wouldn't be able to have their militarized zones in the country. And also, I believe, in conclusion, I believe that despite all of these challenges, the world already has many conflicts, and we should also all strive to the unification of the
pueda
peoples.
parecer un tanto ingenua, pero que creo que es válida en este proyecto de reunificación de las dos Coreas. La misión,
and I want to end
el
with a
camino
phrase.
Y ha de ser recorrido con tesón y constancia. Y para ello nada mejor que aunar esfuerzos entre dirigentes políticos.
Long is the road, and
la Federación por la
when we should walk it consistently and
a escala internacional resuene con ecos positivos, menor será el estruendo de las armas. Muchas gracias una vez más por contar conmigo y por haberme
as we all
invitado a participar de esa cumbre mundial por la paz y conocer así
towards together, the less we are going to hear the shots of the weapons. So sorry for the delay. Thank you very much, Professor Susana. We're gonna go to our next. Professor Giovanni Candido de Oliveira
Licenciado en Derecho, Pontificia Universidad Católica de
is the
Río de
Dean
Janeiro.
of the Universitarian Center of Goiás from Brazil, and is a doctor in law.
Tiene experiencia en el área de derecho con énfasis en teoría general de derecho, actuando principalmente en los siguientes temas: responsabilidad penal, delitos ambientales, democracia en Guyana y Estado federal. Así que vamos a recibir con un fuerte aplauso a nuestro querido profesor. Bienvenido, profesor.
Gracias a todos os painelistas, aos meus colegas.
All the panelists and my colleagues, all the authorities present, I want to greet you with good afternoon.
Ao cumprimentá-los, quero agradecer muito.
By greeting you, I want to thank UPF, to my beloved friend, Dr. Simon Verboli, that has helped me in many fights, and for the invitation to be here in this stage and in this panel. This panel already discussed for the people that anteceded me, for Dr. Simon Verboli, Pastor Schutz, Magister Mercedes, and also the magnificent word of Professor Susana. When we say something about the history of Korea, about the reunification of this country, we have to recap a little bit of its historical, its history in the 19th century, to understand a little bit more what happens in this country. For 1,300 years, this country was one nation. As it was said before, people that live together, that have the same language, the same culture, and the same religion that was already diffused worldwide. In those centuries, the past centuries, the Korean Empire for a long time was dominated by two dynasties, Kim and Joseon. And the Korean army was very influenced by the Chinese army, since China was controlling the whole politics in the continent. The influence of China was ended in Korea in 19 after the Chinese and Korean War. China was defeated by the Japanese Empire, and Japan invaded the Korean Peninsula. After that, the process evolved. Before that, there was a war between Russia and Japan, that Japan was the winner in 1905. And after that, there was a treaty, the ILC treaty, on which Korea was put under a protectorate between the Japan Empire. It wasn't too long after Japan didn't have the presence, the negative presence of China and Russia in the Ocean Pacific. Then Japan declared Korea as part of the Japanese Empire. And the situation was like that until the Second World War. And since 1943, with the end of the Second World War, they started thinking about what to do with the extreme eastern part of the continent that were occupied by Japan. There were Japanese colonies added by the Japanese Empire. In 1943, there was a treaty that was negotiated between China and the US and the Soviet Union that declared that they would make Korea an independent country. In Alta, drawing the future map after the war, Korea was under the domain that would be an area of influence of the Soviet Union. They have imagined that it was more interesting for the Soviet Union to occupy territories in the eastern part, in the western part. And they let the US occupy Korea, that was before determined as a place to be occupied by Soviet Union. They determined that in the 38th parallel would be the limit between both potencies, the Soviet Union and the US. And after the war, it was determined that the Japanese that was above the 38th parallel would give their land to the Soviet Union, and the US would occupy the other part of the peninsula. The US received the situation was like that until 1947-48, until the UN decided that they should have elections there. And in 1948, we have an election, and it's elected the first president in North Korea, but South Korea was still under the US. So the General Park Chung-hee assumed South Korea. They were all military governments. At that time, South Korea determined itself as Hanguk, and North Korea. It was like that during the Cold War, and at that moment, on many places of the world, there were many wars called letter of attorney wars. There were putting one country and the other against one country and another against each other. But what happened at that time? The Soviet Union became a nuclear potency. And some bombs were detonated in the north of Russia. And Russia felt that it was strong enough to defeat the US. And then we have the polarization of the world. One area of influence under the Soviet Union and the other under the influence of the US. This was the moment that Winston Churchill declared that from the Arctic Sea, there is a wall separating the communists and the democratic countries. Then one of those wars, letter of attorney wars, were happened in the Korean Peninsula.
27 de junho, a ONU faz uma reunião do seu Conselho de Segurança e decide através
UN makes a reunion and decides that invasion of the South Korea by the North Korea was illegal, and they authorize the army under the UN influence to invade South Korea. And then 16, then more 8 countries entered with their armies, and a group of 16 countries fought in this war. So, and in the north, China, immediately after the first invasion in June, in August, China already sends 300,000 men to fight in North Korea. Many of them were from Korean ethnic, and they were fighting under the Chinese army. And then the war develops, and China enters the war, Russia enters the war.
Gostaria muito mais escuchar você, mas tem ainda 2 pessoas que nós temos que apresentar.
Pois bem, vamos encerrar.
Podemos concluir.
Vou encerrar. Muito bem, o que acontece em junho de 1943?
In 1943, there was an armistice. That doesn't mean that the war has ended.
Houve várias tentativas por parte
There were many attempts from North Korea and South Korea to reunify both Koreas. South Korea has tried many times the send policy to sending humanitarian help and investments to South Korea. But what happened is that it doesn't solve the problem. Many musical bands tried to talk about the unification of the 2 Koreas, but it didn't help much as well. Kim Il-sung also tried to create a country but didn't achieve the desired result. The chairman of the Hyundai Industries also tried and build a temple, but it didn't help much as well. So all the influences were negative in a sense that it didn't help the Koreas to reunite. One side, Soviet Union and China, and the other, the US and Japan. The influence of third parties didn't help Korea to reunite, and so I suggest solutions that have already happened in the reunification of other countries. Maybe reuniting the currency in both Koreas and allowing them to keep their political.
Os exemplos já foram mencionados.
And also to build up a federation. Someone mentioned the reunification of Germany, but the economic differences between those countries were huge. The economy of South Korea and the economic of North Korea is very different. And no one wants to give up on their political systems. So what could happen if we had the reunification of both Koreas? If both Koreas reunited, the second most powerful economic power, more powerful than Japan, France, right after the US.
Teríamos uma renda per capita absolutamente inimaginável, da ordem de $37.600.
We have a huge economic system for both countries. And who says that is Goldman Sachs? That says that. It says that this could happen on the unification of both countries. It would be the second most powerful economy in the world. So what could happen in terms of peace for war? The nuclear weapons that both Koreas have could make the Korean Republic, the reunited Korean Republic, a military power that would be the fourth in the world. The power equilibrium could give equilibrium for the whole eastern part of the continent. And would bring peace to a region of the world that doesn't know that from a very long time. And to finish my lecture, we should have something that could serve as a treat of peace in the Middle East and in the eastern part. The work that Dr. Hak Cha-moon and Dr. Moon have done for a long time, that I know very deeply, since I am involved with that with more than 40 years. I saw Colonel Burpak working with them for a long time, but in my own vision, without the influence of Russia, Soviet Union, Japan, and US, there is no possibility for both countries to negotiate their reunification, because none of them want to give up on their political systems. I want to thank the opportunity that was given to me, and I say one more time, thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a la excelente presentación del profesor Giovanni Cándido de Oliveira. Vamos a nuestro siguiente panelista, la pastora Leira Florencio dos Santos, pastora de la Iglesia Cristo Retorno de Brasil. La pastora Leira Florencio es casada con el empresario pastor Daniel Vicente, es la representante legal de IRMA, Instituto de Recuperación de Misión Amor, con unidades nacionales ubicadas en las ciudades de Osasco y Cotia, y unidades internacionales que están implementadas en Chile y Francia. IRMA es una institución que asiste a los niños y a las familias para la prevención de drogas y el alcohol. El proyecto desarrolla actividades a través del arte, la música, con el fin de proteger y prevenir a estos niños del mundo de las drogas. Licenciada en sistemas y especialista en gestión de proyectos estratégicos y económicos, consultora en proyectos estratégicos en empresas nacionales e internacionales, pastora y cantante de la Iglesia Misión Cristo Volta. Así que vamos a recibirla con un fuerte aplauso. Bienvenida, pastora.
Boa noite a todos.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the great Creator, Lord of Lords, the eternal God, for another day of life, and that we can be united under the topic for the unification of the world and peace in this reunion of leaders in 2021. I want to express my gratitude for Dr. Hak Cha-moon that expressed her message worldwide to serve God, to live in love, and to achieve a word of peace, especially through those hope rallies. I want to thank everyone who is part of the UPF in South America, Reverend Ching and Dr. Simone, that have provided me with this special moment to be one of the speakers. I cannot say and I cannot forgive, I cannot forget to thank my parents, Pastor Jonas and Kasia, and all my family members to have helped me and to be for being ambassadors of peace and tireless army that has the mission of love. My mission is to bring peace to take the meeting notice rejected by society, whether they are born to parents addicted to drugs and alcohol, or simply people who have lost hope of living due to the destruction that the world of the drugs has caused them. Peace, security, and human development is a theme very important in this time, since we are in a pandemic that we don't know when it's going to end. This has been the message that we religious women leaders believe, and that we know that we can strive to achieve, leave as a legacy, inspiring and motivating people to remain being differentiated messengers wherever they go. In February 2020, I went to South Korea together with world leaders, where I had the opportunity to discuss this topic of world peace through shared values. There were millions of people, millions of leaders from all parts of the world united under the same purpose. As how can we transform and make our societies better? At that opportunity, in one of the meetings, I had the opportunity to sing a song performed by many great singers in the world. As a Brazilian, I was able to sing in my language this song that says, "So my soul sings to you, Lord, how great you are." At that moment, several voices in different languages sang the same song that was in each soul. Great is our God. This song continues to be strong today, as there may be a lack of air in the lungs, but our calmness continues to wait on the great God. 2020 was more than a challenging year. We were used to hearing difficult news from a specific country, and suddenly it was no longer just a nation, but everyone started experiencing the same dramas, the same fears. The words could be in other languages, but the pain, the anguish were the same. Suffering and disturbance on a world scale. All social, political, and economic spheres and spiritual spheres were affected. The seek for hope, for security, or simply peace became the cry of humanity. Perhaps many thought, who will be listening to us? Who will give us answers? What is the remedy for an afflicted soul? Even before my physical body becomes ill, how to fight this enemy that defies science, that is not defeated by weapons, that is not defeated by economic, political, or even religious power. I'm sure that the pandemic taught us many lessons, but I believe that the most important of them was solidarity. No one is an island, and the pain and or the happiness of one person is connected to others, because we are one family, one human family under God. On this vision, we are sharing the challenge of the unification of the Korean Peninsula. Someone can ask themselves, what does it have to do with me and South Korea? And the answer is very simple. What happens to Korea or the citizens of the world also affects us. That's why the search for the solution for the world problems has to be expanded in our hearts for us to see the world as a family. However, we can have discussions, studies, and in the end, we can also give recommendations. But this will only be meaningful if the true love is rescued within us. The love that takes us to places that no one can enter. God's love will give us the power to find the solution for all the problems that affect human beings. And which love is that, you can ask me? Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, does not brag, does not boast, does not mistreat, does not seek its interests, does not easily anger, does not hold a grudge, does not resent. This love is that is not happy with injustice, but is happy with the truth. Believe all things, believe all things, hope all things, endure all things. This love is the Creator. This love is God's love. The world needs God as a sick person needs remedy. It's believed that you are successful when you do what you love. May helping and serving people voluntarily becomes what you love to do. May this love invade your heart and may us have attitudes that make the difference for this generation, regardless of your age, your race, your religion, or your nation that you belong. The world needs us. I'm already finishing. When I think about Korea, we can how can a nation that is in war in 70 years? What is lacking? It's lacking love, dialogue, and loving the enemy as Jesus has taught us. This is valid not only to Korea but to the world, starting in our families. The peace in the world is starting in our families. We don't need to go too far to establish peace. If we do our part within our house and within our community, we will be creating the peace of the world. That may our message always be one of hope, because hope lives and so we can believe in a better tomorrow. Thank you so much for this opportunity of sharing with you all. May the great love of God bless you all.
La pastora Leila Florencio dos Santos. Vamos a pedir a nuestro Haji, doctor Roshan Khan, que pueda dar las palabras de clausura de este evento como presidente de la UPF y líder de la comunidad musulmana de Guyana. Así que, por favor, doctor Khan, voy a presentarlo brevemente. El doctor Roshan Khan es empresario, doctor honoris causa en estudios de religiones y paz de la United Graduate College Seminario Internacional y obtuvo maestría en la Embajada de la Diplomacia en United Graduate College Seminario Internacional. En el año 2000 fue invitado por el Consejo Indio para la Cooperación Internacional y preparar y entregar un trabajo de la audiencia de más de 5.000 personas a la que asistió el entonces primer ministro Atal Bihari Vajpayee sobre el tema contribuciones de los indios en la política de la economía de Guyana. Él es actor, escritor y poeta y se centra en la feminidad y la maternidad. Comisionado en relaciones étnicas y miembro de la junta directiva de la Prison Sentence Manager Foundation y fundador de la Red de Embajadores por la Paz Islámica Internacional. Miembro de la junta directiva de la Asociación de Paternidad Responsable de Guyana y miembro retirado de la Junta de la Liga Juventud Musulmana. Director y miembro principal del complejo islámico Ana Caterina y cofundador y presidente durante varios años del Foro Islámico en la Educación en Guyana. Dr. Haji Roshan Khan, welcome, please.
Thank you, sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the tradition of our beloved father, the Sun Myung Moon, the Holy Father and inspiration of us all, Kamsa Hamida. I give you that in his voice. He normally say it in that wonderful, beautiful voice. The reunification of the Koreas as the basis for world peace. Mr. Chairman, respected, beloved members of the panel, excellencies of the Universal Peace Federation, international leaders out of South America, I wish to extend greetings on behalf of the Universal Peace Federation Guyana chapter, the Guyana Islamic Forum for Education, Peace, and Religious Solidarity, and the Electric Mosque's presentation of the teachings of Islam at the second South American online conference of the Universal Peace Federation. As we are talking about the reunification of the Koreas, I wish to state that because of Father Moon and our beloved spirit mother Hak Jaha Moon, I feel as if I'm Korean, and I feel a very deep connection with the Korean Peninsula today because of all that they have done to educate and to train us. This merging I see of prominent religious and academic leaders brings great joy to my heart as it reinforces shared goal, our shared goal for the reunification of the Koreas. Throughout the past few decades, we are all aware that religious societies have played a pivotal role in peace-building efforts beyond traditional government-driven peace negotiations. We believe the reality of a peaceful world cannot be achieved or be surmised without acknowledging the role of religion. For at their core, religions exist to give purpose to individuals and to help shape their lives for a better and a more wonderful world tomorrow. And so it is my distinct honor as part of one of these religious societies for United Korea to address you today on the theme of this, the reunification of Koreas as the basis for world peace. Like many organizations worldwide, we, the Guyana Islamic Forum for Education, Peace, and Religious Solidarity, the Universal Peace Federation Guyana chapter, in conjunction with the Electric Mosque Teachings of Islam, we are deeply concerned by the tragedy that led to the split of the Koreas. And like the rest of the world, we too strongly advocate for peaceful reunification of the world and humanity, which is the philosophy and the wisdom of thoughts of Almighty God as taught to us by our holy founders, Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon, and his beloved wife, our Holy Mother, Dr. Hak Jaha Moon. We believe that if we can bring the Korean Peninsula together, this will definitely be an incentive for world peace. In the religion of Islam, we are taught that reconciliation is of great importance. As a matter of fact, one of the central purposes of a Muslim is to live peacefully and to spread peace so as to create a harmonious society. As the Holy Quran, the scriptures of the Muslim says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God Almighty, most gracious, most merciful. O humanity, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it, He created its mate, and through both, he spread countless men and women. And so be mindful of God Almighty, the Creator, in whose name you appeal to one another and honor family ties. Surely God Almighty is the ever watchful over you. The Holy Quran 4:1. This is exactly the wisdom and the philosophy that got me hooked to the Universal Peace Federation and to the philosophies of the divine principles of Sun Myung Moon, our Holy Father, and to the Universal Peace Federation. This is the exact quote that goes exactly with the wisdom and the teachings of Sun Myung Moon, our Holy Father. One of the main takeaways from this verse is that we are all one human family under God, and we must maintain the bond that connects us. And what is the philosophy that Father Moon and Hag Jaha Moon, our mother, has been teaching constantly over the last decades? That we are one human family under God. Having said this, I'm extremely pleased to see South Korea President Moon Jae-in in a speech to mark the 74th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japan's 1910 to 1945 rule, in which he vowed to achieve the unification of the Korean Peninsula by 2045, a century after the end of the Second World War. We, as ambassadors of peace and men and women of religion and humanity, must pray and support as best as we can the Korean president and the peoples of South Korea and all the wise people from around the world to call for a one Korea on a constant basis. We also saw in 2018, whereby both leaders, North and South, also symbolically crossed the borders, marking it the first time a South Korean president crossed the North border and vice versa. This is a historical thing, and I see as a thing of prophecy to be fulfilled sometime into the future. While we applaud these initiatives towards peace building, I believe that the leaders of both Koreas should meet more often without preconditions. Further, I wish to add that it is quite astounding and remarkable to see that after the Korean War, South Korea evolved into a completely developed country that they are today, and they are an example to other countries. Just look at them 20 years ago or 40 years ago, and look at South Korea, at what it has achieved today because of its contribution and belief in one human family under God, and also believe in democracy. It is for these reasons that we, the organizations I mentioned, believe that North Korea has more to gain than to lose in this unique reunification that the Universal Peace Federation and all the sane and wise people of the world are calling for. I also believe that South Korea has more to give and less to lose. As such, we propose that strategies be developed to ensure that most of the North Koreans have a positive post-unification life in order to ensure their cooperation in the unification process. Additionally, we implore the governments of North and South Korea to take measures towards peaceful reunification. Consequently, from a humanitarian point of view, we propose that both governments allow free communication and connectivity between members of the separated families. And we know the heartache and pains that these families have suffered. And sometimes as I'm now close to Korea, when I think and read and see about it, it just brings tears to my eyes. As I saw a bit earlier, as to the destruction that took place when Japan had invaded and occupied, tears also came down to me just a few minutes ago.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. You are really one poet. I see you, the random spirit in you, but we need to close because the time is over. Please, only 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
We anticipate that the United Korea will inevitably become a significant player on the world stage. Kamsa Hamida.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Un aplauso, por favor. Realmente todo un poeta.
Thank you very much. He's a poet. Thank you very much for the spirit that you provided us, and I was really involved in all of the topics that you talked about, and the time just flew. And so sorry for having extended the time. So we are gonna take a photo. Thank you very much, all of you, for sharing. And if you can let us know, we're gonna take the photo.
Para la foto.
Muchas gracias a cada uno. Sacamos la foto en 3,
Thank
2,
you very much.
3, 2, 1. Muchísimas gracias.
Bueno, entonces para finalizar, vamos a dar un aplauso a todos ustedes por estar
Just a big
presentes.
round of
Vamos a
applause to all of you
comprometernos
for being present, and we're gonna
para seguir tratando estos
continue meeting
que todos tienen mucho que aportar.
to
Muchísimas
deal with
gracias a
all of
todos
these
y
topics,
especialmente a la
and we can
UPF por
all see that
este
you have
importante evento. Con esto
Muy
concluimos.
a lot of things to provide, to add. Thank you very much,
Prime Minister
especially.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
Adieu.
Dios te bendiga.
Muito obrigado a todos. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias. Muy buenas
God
noches.
bless you.
Muchas gracias.
God bless.
Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Ok. Entonces, concluimos así. Muchísimas gracias.